Argentina has become the latest country to swap dollars for yuan, following Brazil's lead. From April, Argentina will start to pay for imports from China with the Chinese currency. Buenos Aires aims to relieve the country's dwindling dollar reserves after a historic drought cut its key agricultural exports. According to Bloomberg, the yuan overtook the dollar for the first time last month as the most widely used currency for cross-border transactions in China. And to talk more about why Argentina is switching to the yuan, I'm joined by Yan Liang. She's a professor of economics at Willamette University. Good to see you again, Professor. Welcome back to the show. This is a story that we have been following now for several months as more and more countries seemingly are becoming more open, I should say, to using the yuan as their primary way of transactions. What's changed in the last few months that's allowed sort of more countries more confidence in the yuan?
Good to talk to you, Phil. So I think there are a couple very important reasons. One has to do with the fact that, many of these countries trade in dollars and they accumulate dollar reserves and they also borrow dollar loans. And so as the US Fed hiked interest rates and the dollar strengthened against other currencies, then these countries' debt burden strengthened or heightened. And the other reason, I think, is the geopolitical risk that is looming large as the US, for example, unilateral sanction countries and exclude them from the dollar payment system. And so I think that becomes a wake-up call for some countries that they wanted to shield themselves from potential mishaps down the road.
I've read numerous articles. I think my mom sent me one saying that, oh, the dollar is going to die and the yuan's going to take off. And you often hear they pit the US dollar versus the Chinese yuan. And I just want to remind people, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 60+% of all global trade today is in US dollar, which means that 30 to 40% of all global trade is actually not in US dollars. So this isn't or shouldn't be a big deal, but psychologically it is a big deal. Can't the yuan and the dollar both be used in different transactions? I mean, they can both get along, so to speak.
Right. I think that is what is happening. I think, for example, China's own cross-border trade and payments, now the yuan share has gone up to 48%, right, to all China's cross-border transactions. And, the dollar share has gone down to 47%. So for China, I think it's a sensible move, right, to diversify and to be able to utilize its own currency to shield itself from, the fluctuations of the dollars. And this has been, an ongoing effort since 2008 global financial crisis. I think that, gives China a wake-up call that, they should not rely too much on the dollars. Now, I think for the rest of the world, as China becoming more and more important as a trade partner, as an investment, partner, it makes sense for these countries to also diversify away from, dollar, dominance. But that said, I do think that, this idea that somehow yuan is going to overtake the United States dollars as the, sort of hegemonic currency reserve currency,
Right. But
I think that is still too far.
In some way, China's kind of won the first or second round of this already, because the goal was to show certain countries that China would be a good trading partner, which they have in some cases. The second one was to ask them to use the yuan as the cross-border trading currency, which they have. And so in many respects, you can say that China's strategy in asking countries to do this is working, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as far as bilateral trade or investment relationships, or even regional, investment and trade relationships are concerned, I think definitely it's a visible, progress, right, for the Chinese yuan to be adopted. Even though globally, yeah, that ratio is still very low. But I think, again, for countries that rely a lot and wanted to trade with China, and also have that investment partnership with China, I think using Chinese yuan as a settlement currency is the right move.
How much does the interest rate differential make? Because a lot of these countries have debt. I guess almost all countries seemingly have debt these days. But if you have to borrow U.S. dollars, there's a cost to that, right? Or if whatever currency you borrow from, you have to pay the holding fee to that, which is essentially the interest rate. If interest rates continue to go up here in the U.S., it only makes the cost of borrowing dollars even higher, which would, in some cases, help, I guess, China's efforts to have more countries use the yuan at minimum to diversify their risk.
Absolutely. I think you really, put it very I think rightly, right, that whenever the U.S. hiked interest rate, that would increase the dollar debt services. And the double whammy is that not only the interest rate is higher, but also because of the high interest rate, the dollar value also increased. So the double whammy is, the debt cost is higher, and also dollar becomes more expensive, right? Not to mention all the other conditionalities that are imposed, on a lot of these dollar debt coming from IMF. Again, Argentina, I think it's really a victim of that. So I think there's definitely good reasons for economic and geopolitical reasons for countries to diversify their currencies in their settlements.
Yeah, and also manage their inflation risk as well. Professor Yan,
Absolutely.
always good to see you, and thank you for the analysis.